back to Mini-Modelog and the first unboxing on the channel in a little while and first bit of content on the channel for a little while. I've been really busy putting together lore videos for you guys and unbeknownst to me, when I started researching the lore, I didn't realise there was so much of it. So I've kind of been collating all the information together and then I'm working out a structure of videos for that, which will be coming soon. But I thought the next Games Workshop release would be the Snotlings and we'd be unboxing those next on the channel. Unbeknownst to me, the lockdown happened and it seems that Games Workshop shifted gears a little bit and we've basically got Spike 9, which is kind of alliances based teams is the best way I can explain it. Obviously we've always had the Chaos Renegades. Chaos Renegades have been around quite a while. They're a team you could buy only on Forge World though, because the range of models is quite eclectic that you can have for the team. But now they've released two teams in their standard way on Games Workshop, which are mixed teams. You've got the Middenheim Maulers, which we're going to take a look at, which are humans, dwarves and halflings. And then you've got the Underworld Creepers, which are goblins and Skaven. Now, there's been a lot of opinion on this, and it's why I've kind of waited to do the video, to kind of get your guys' gauge on it and what you all thought. My immediate knee-jerk reaction was it's just repackaging of old sprues. And when I got hold of 9 and I started reading Spike 9, even the way that the rosters are put together is based, I feel, on the sprues. And I'll show you that when I get into the actual book and into the sprues of the Middenheim Marauders. Is I think what Games Workshop have done is, due to maybe not being able to make new models, because I've noticed they've obviously concentrated on 40k with the Indomitus release and things like that, that they needed to give Blood Bowl something, because they've been promising us quite a lot. I mean, we've been waiting on Snotlings, we're waiting on Treeman, we're waiting on quite a lot as a community. And I thought maybe this was going to happen, but not as soon as they expected it to. So what I mean by that is it's not hard to change that number. And if you read the Spike, it doesn't really say that you're in Spike 9. About the only clue that you're kind of moved on from 8 is in kind of Mindy's bit in Elven Snobbery. But even that's a story about elves, and wood elves are a couple of issues ago. So it makes you wonder whether or not they've changed the number and this might have been Spike 10. It's questionable is all I'm saying. Because everyone, including me, was expecting Snotlings. But going back to this whole argument of did they just package old sprues? Now, obviously, it's not going to take much to do this box art. They've had these arts before. And it's not hard to do this. This is just a collation of images that stock images they've already got. But then you think, well, hang on a minute. They've obviously painted those models, or have they? Is there a way at Games Workshop just to change the colouring? I mean, if you're a decent graphics artist, you should be able to change most of those colours without too much difficulty. So here's the question, and let me know what you think in the comments down below. Have they just repackaged old sprues and thrown them out there to keep us happy? Or is this going to turn into a valid team? Let me know in the comments down below. I've also put together, and I'll be talking about this when we look at Spike 9, 3 starting lineups for the 3 teams in Spike 9. So I've put one together for the Renegades, one together for the Underworld Creepers, and one together for the Middenheim Marauders. And I'll talk about that when I get into the magazine. But I've popped them in the description if you want to just take a look and give me your opinion. But I put some starting lineups together based on kind of a league, if you were taking each of the teams into a league. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. But let's first off get into the Middenheim Marauders. So first off, we're going to take a look at this. So we're going to take a look at the actual team. So, in my opinion, it wouldn't take Games Workshop long to actually do this box. These are, like I say, stock images that they've already got. The real question is whether they've actually painted the models. And the reason I kind of say that is because it probably is quite easy for someone who's a decent graphics artist to change the colours of the models without trying that hard. But it is possible as well that someone actually already has painted these up. So that's the front. You actually get 15 models in this set, which is quite a lot really for a team, because it pretty much gives you your full 16, give or take. Which is pretty good, because obviously you get the linemen, the catchers, the throwers, the blitzers and stuff. So you kind of get everything you need. So on the back, you've got obviously what's what. So 1 Human Blitzer, 3 Human Linemen, 1 Catcher, 1 Thrower, 1 Troll Slayer, 1 Dwarf Blitzer, 1 Dwarf Runner, 3 Dwarf Blockers, and 3 Halfling Hopefuls. That's what you get in the box. And then of course you get the tokens. Now, to me, they're just the same tokens you'd get. That's the human one, that's the human coin, that's the dwarf one, and that's the dwarf coin. So the only thing they've really had to do is produce the transfers, and that's it. Everything else is pretty easy to produce. So let's take a look inside anyway. Looks like I've got a spare base that's moved about a little bit, and the instructions. So with any Blood Bowl box, you get the instructions obviously, and in this one it's a little bit more in depth because you got the human, you got all of the players basically, from halflings to begin with, then the humans, then the dwarves. So they've obviously taken those out of the other kind of stuff. So that's straight out of one of the dwarf ones, and that's straight out of the human information on how to build. So that wouldn't have been too hard to put together. But let's take a look at the sprues anyway. To me, this is the only thing that's new, in the fact that they have actually got it Old World Alliance team transfer sheet, the top 2020, Dwarf Troll Slayer, all the different, you know, black and white, and there's all the different positionals written there as well. So I reckon that's probably the newest thing in the box. The rest, well, obviously you've got your bases, which are standard, so let's put them to one side. That looks to me like the human sprue, the dwarf sprue, and one of the halflings related sprues. So I'll just put the halfling one to the side. We're not going to take a look at the halfling and dwarf ones because we've already done those on a previous video. If you want to check them out, pop up in the corner in a minute. But the human one is obviously straight out of the main game. So you've got a thrower on there, you've got a catcher on there. It's arguable to say which ones are the linemans and which ones are the blitzers though. But I'm sure the helmets you've got can most definitely work that out. And of course you get the human balls there that you get in the game. So that sprue is pretty much ripped straight from the main game. So I'll just bring it a little bit closer, just so you can see, because I don't think I've ever done the human team. The only thing I'd say is debatable is which is the lineman and which is the blitzers. The thrower's pretty obvious, the catcher's pretty obvious. You got a multitude of different heads. I'm not sure if you've got more heads than bodies there, to be honest. And all the shoulder pads, etc. But that is basically the human sprue out of the main game. So going back to my earlier question, it is, have they just repackaged using the sprues? I mean, obviously that's the main dwarf sprue. Same thing again. You've got all the bits for the Troll Slayer, all the bits for everything really. The only interesting thing is you have 3 halflings. And in the list for Old World Alliances, you've only actually got, you can only actually take 2, I believe. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure you can only take 2. So there is the option to do some sort of converting there. It's a shame they've not given you the walking variety of halfling, because that I used to make my puggy, and all I had to do was add a scarf on it really, and it kind of riffs on the artwork from the halfling book from Spike 5. But that's what you kind of get in the box. You get the 3 sprues, which give you 15 models in all. So you get a human sprue, a dwarf sprue, and one of the halfling sprues. I mean, you can even see on the dates of the sprues that the halfling one's 2019, which is when we got that. The human one, 2016, and obviously the dwarf's 2017. So it kind of proves my point that they've basically taken the sprues and repackaged them. Let's see if it reflects it in Spike 9. So as I said when we were looking at the sprues, I think these are very interlinked in the fact that I'm not sure what drove what, whether the sprues drove the selections or the selections drove the sprues. I think it's sprue driving the selection. We'll see what I mean in a minute. I think there's a slightly new art style on this one compared to previous editions. It's a little bit more similar to the Gutbusters, because the Gutbusters had a slightly different art style as well. Whether they've changed artists since they started Spike magazine, I think they probably have. But let's take a look inside. First off, you've got the typical thing of the Middenheim Marauders kind of team and the front blurb of the guest editor. But let's get straight into it. First team that comes up is Chaos Renegades team. Obviously, you can buy the Chaos Renegades team off of Forge World. It's never been a box set, and that's due to the lineup. You got a little bit of history here on page 3, and then moving on to page 4 and 5, you're straight into the rosters and the star players. You got on page 4, you've got 4 of the famous teams. Obviously, the most famous Renegade team is the Chaos All-Stars, which Morgan Thorg have been known to play for, and Bob Bifford at times as well. So the team roster, the Renegades is a real big mixed bag. You've obviously got choice of up to 3 different big guys, the Troll, the Ogre and the Minotaur. And then of course you've got a choice of Human Lineman, and you can have up to 12 of those. And then you can have 1 Goblin, 1 Orc, 1 Skaven and 1 Dark Elf, all of which are linemen, all of which come with animosity. The only one that comes with any more skills than animosity is the Goblin, so personally I think he's a must-have. But for me, a Chaos team, if I was going to pick the big guy, I would take the Minotaur. And you can see from my roster that I put together, I took the Minotaur, all of the different 4 races. So I took a Dark Elf Lineman, a Skaven Lineman, an Orc Lineman, and a Goblin Renegade. And then I made it the rest up of humans. I took 4 rerolls, which might have been a little bit of an oversight because I didn't take any fan factor. And I took an Apothecary. That took me to my million, and I think that's a good setup maybe even for a tournament. But I think it depends what you're used to using. If you're used to using an Ogre or you're used to using a Troll, maybe go for those. The Troll, of course, gives you, and the Ogre gives you the option of going for that one-turner with the Goblin. So they do have kind of good and bad. But for me, thematically, Chaos team has to have a Minotaur. Don't know why. Maybe it's just that's the way I see it. You got a full list of star players, a lot of which we've seen before in other publications and other Spike magazines. There is a couple of new ones. Ugroth Bolgrot, which is known as the other Bolgrot brother, he's kind of new. And Zarag Madai, which is a Chaos Dwarf and can play for the Chaos Renegades. Is that pointing towards something? Is that possibly pointing towards a proper Chaos Dwarf team? Obviously, they released the old metal version on Made to Order, but are we going to see a plastic version? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And of course, you can have Bob Bifford and a lot of the standard kind of guys that you can have across the Chaos teams. So, like Guffle Pussmore, which is obviously known for Nurgle, Morgan Thorg, like I've already said. And of course, Bomber Dribblesnot, which is of course more of a Goblin kind of person. So, that's kind of the Chaos Renegades. And that was my pick. Let me know what you thought about my team that I put together. What would you change? What would you add? What would you not take? What would you take? But what I like about Spike magazine, and I've always liked, if you're brand new and you have no clue about Blood Bowl, it's your first walk through, your second team or your first team, you've only been playing a little while, it gives you a kind of fully fledged Mongrel Horde team, which shows you in a way how to upgrade it, what to add, adding cheerleaders, fan factor, what's a good fan factor to have. It kind of answers a lot of questions. But then if you didn't even want to go off of that, there's still building a Chaos Renegade team and player progression section on pages 8 and 9. For me, they've condensed what is in a Spike magazine for one team into a couple of pages, which I think is quite nice, but they've got quite a lot to cover in this one. So that's the Renegades team. And obviously, like I said, this is more of a team that you would buy off of Forge World. It is slightly more expensive as a result, and you've got a variety of different models in there. But if you like a team to look all different, this might be the team for you. Again, at the back, we've got a star player spotlight. This time it's Ogroth, which gets the spotlight. And you've got this newer artwork style, which we saw in the Gutbusters, like I say, in Spike 8, which you're now seeing in Spike 9 as well. Of course, you've got the standard things, which are in all Spike magazines. Here's our Dirt from the Dugout. Mindy's back talking about Old World Alliances teams, etc. I quite like this for the fluff element, but again, it's been a feature in Spike since Spike 1, so that's really cool. They're keeping it going. We then move on to the Underworld Denizens teams, made up of Goblins and Skaven. Again, you get a bit of background blurb of why they exist, and then you're straight into this similar, and again, it's similar layout as the Chaos Renegades team. Now, for me, with the Underworld Creepers and the new box, you'll notice straight away that the roster is basically a Skaven sprue and a Goblin sprue. Because the Goblin sprue is pretty unspecific, there's not many positionals on a Goblin team. My guessing in that box is you get a Skaven one, which has everything that you can have there, and a Goblin sprue. Obviously, you won't get the Underworld Troll, and I don't know if they're going to do something new for that, but you could get any Troll and sort of change it up if you want. I didn't bother with this team because I've got most of the models to actually make this team anyway. I can make this out of my other two teams. You can argue, oh, well, they're not the same, going to have the same paint job. But that's kind of cool. To me, that's why these teams exist. They kind of come together from previous teams, or I could write a backstory that says, oh, well, the two original teams fell apart and they decided to come together as an Underworld Denizens team. But, you know, there are options for me there, which is why I didn't buy this team. But again, I think this is sprue driven because you've got the addition of a gutter runner. And for anyone who remembers the Underworld Denizens teams, the original Denizens teams is 2 throwers, 2 Skaven Blitzers. So they've done away with that, and now you've got a gutter runner instead. Do I think that's a worthy trade? Personally, no. Because I think you need the Blitzers on this team to make this team tough enough. Because you don't have any Goblin Blitzers. There's no such thing. Of course, Animosity is a big feature on all these teams as a skill. Because, you know, if a Skaven's going to throw to a Goblin, they might have fallen out and decided they don't want to. So that's why Animosity is there. Again, you've got the Troll, and you've got the option of that one turner with the Goblins. But personally, you don't have access, I don't think, to Goblin secret weapons, which is a bit of a shame. You've got the typical star players that you can have. But again, with this, there's not many which you actually have models for. You've got Glarton, Haflem, Morgan Thorg, which all have models. And if you can get hold of them, I think there's an old Nobbler Blackwart model knocking about, and maybe an old Bomber Dribblesnot model, which you could probably get from maybe 3rd edition. But there's no new models as such for those. So that's kind of the Underworld Denizens team. Like I say, when I put mine together, I took Skaven Blitzer and the Skaven Thrower and the Troll. I took the 3 Skaven Linemen because I wanted the speed, and then the rest was made up of Goblins. I took 4 rerolls and an Apothecary. Took me to 980 with 20 over. I could probably take 2 Fan Factor. That's what I would take, mainly because I'm more of a Skaven player than a Goblin player. Without the actual use of the secret weapons, I think the Goblins on their own are not that great, which is why I probably rely heavily on the Skaven in this lineup. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Maybe let me know what star players you would take. Again, I will probably take the Skaven ones, being a Skaven kind of player. And I think the addition of Creek Rustgouger would be a good one, him being actually a Rat Ogre, which would then give you an Underworld Troll and a Rat Ogre on team, maybe for one game. So there's kind of plenty of ways of augmenting the team using star players. But I think with the lack of kind of that Skaven Blitzer, and then the lack of the fact you've got no Goblin secret weapons, I think this is the weakest out of the 3 teams personally. And you'll see why when we get into the the Middenheim Maulers in just a second. Again, you turn over, you get the Underworld Creepers. Gives you an idea again of how to upgrade your team to a high level. And again, you get building an Underworld team, player progression, and then a summary at the bottom there. I'm not going to go through that. I'll leave you guys to read that yourselves. And then we get a look at Glart Smashrip, who we've seen multiple times before. Obviously, he's a big Skaven, kind of used in Skaven teams quite a lot. I've used him before. I think he's a great player. And then we move. What makes sense to go after one rat, go on to another with chat with the rat. And I quite like that they've kept the chat with the rat in the theme of the Underworld. I quite like that. Rats and stuff. I quite like that. It's cool. I love the colour scheme of this book because it carries up through to each team. And then we're into the Old World Alliances. Now, I'm really pleased they've done this team. I think this is a team that's been needed for quite some time because it's kind of a human-esque throw together. I mean, you've had the Chaos throw together teams for donkey's years. So it's nice that they've kind of addressed it and given you a human team which is more thrown together. And for me, it gives me an opportunity to paint some dwarves and some humans, which I've never done, because on the channel we've unboxed the dwarves, but they belong to somebody else. We've never unboxed the humans, and that's why I want to take a look at the sprue at the start of the video. But let's get into the roster. Now, I had a good look at this roster. You've only got access to one big guy and an ogre, so I would take that standard, and as you can see from the list down below, I took the ogre. And to be honest, I think if you're a dwarf player, you're going to love this squad. Because as a dwarf player, you're used to your team being relatively slow. With movement 4, movement 5, etc. I mean, the fastest dwarf is movement 6. You chuck in a human blitzer with movement 7, or a human catcher with movement 8 even, and suddenly you've got a team that not can just kind of square up with a cube. You can also, you know, with a cage, you haven't just got a cageable team, you've also got a team which can run with the ball, which dwarves can't do very well. So I think if you're a dwarf player and you wanted to try something different, I think this would actually be great for you. It's how I put the team together, because like I say, I took an ogre, I took pretty much all the dwarves. I took the troll slayer, the blitzer, I definitely took the human blitzer as well, because you need 2 blitzers. I took 2 dwarf blockers, I took the 2 halfling hopefuls, and that's more to go for a sneaky one-turner if you need it. I took the human thrower and human catcher, and a human lineman. Obviously, if I grow to the team to 16 players, I'd probably take more human linemen and or replace people that die, because obviously people die in the game. But that's why I made sure I took an apothecary, because you're going to need an apothecary in case anyone dies. I also took two rerolls and was left with 10,000 gold at the end of it for 1 fan factor. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of all the teams I've put together. Whether they're good, whether they're bad, what you would change. I would really like to know. But again, I think this team has the most available star players, model-wise. So you've got Griff Oberwald, Grim Ironjaw, Helmut Wolf, Carla von Kill, Mighty Zug, Morgan Thorg if you've got an old version, and even Puggy to some extent, because in the box you get 3 halflings where you can only actually field, I think, 2. You can only field 2 halflings, but you've got 3 in the sprue, so you have the opportunity to actually make yourself a Puggy Bacon Breath out of the other halfling if you've not got another halfling box knocking about. I have, so, and I've made a Puggy before. Unfortunately, the sprue, which I've got just here, doesn't have the walking one, which is actually a better version of Puggy. Again, it gives you some artwork. I'm not sure if that's a new Griff artwork there, but one art piece of artwork which interests me is this Barrack Flower Blast, which is kind of a dwarf, what looks like a dwarf bazooka. Now, I reckon you could probably get something from Warhammer Age of Sigmar for that. I'm not sure. I'm going to take a look and maybe do a conversion. We shall see. That's my thoughts on the Old World Alliances teams. Again, you turn over, you get the Middenheim and Marauders information, how you'd upgrade your team. And then you turn over again and it gives you the typical information of, you know, building an old world. And you've got 2 options. You've got muscle or finesse. I would probably go down the muscle option personally. And again, gives you player progression and a summary of the team. I really like this Spike magazine because I feel a lot of things are condensed and it's not wishy-washy. It's straight to the point with each team. Quite nice that you get a regular star player spotlight for each team. I probably would take Helmut Wolf for the Old World Alliances to get that chainsaw player, which I think would be really cool. And then again at the back, you've got lesser known star players. Obviously we've had this before. And here you've got Creek, you've got Hackflem, you've got Skitter Stab for your Skaven. And then you move into the human ones with Carla von Kill, Mighty Zug, Grim Ironjaw. Finally finishing up with Nobbler Blackwart and Flint Churnblade, which is a dwarf guy. So that's really cool. Again, plays for Dwarf Old World Alliances. I really like this Spike magazine because I feel out of all the Spike magazines, it's quite to the point. Still has the fluff in there, still does everything that it should do, but kind of cuts back on some of the larger fluff areas. I do, however, think it's great that we've got this and it's great for those teams. Like I said when I was looking at the sprue, is those rosters sprue driven? Let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought of my rosters for the 3 teams. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to check out all the links down in the comments. And I'll see you next time.